What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to the Final Shot Saloon, Gunfights of the Old West. I wanted to start doing these after we talked about an Old West gunfighter, whether it be in a movie or a television show. I might actually add some other interesting ones that I found from time to time. I've always found the gunfighter, especially in the Old West, to be fascinating. They weren't always running and gunning like we see in the movies. Some of them obviously had families. Some of them were outlaws. Some of them worked for the law. Some of them were just regular old cattle ranch hands. And the term gunfighter for me means kind of two things. You can actually be good or evil with it. A gunfighter is also someone who is very proficient with firearms, whether it be a pistol, shotgun, lever action, or even a buffalo rifle. If you're proficient at it, I mean drawing the gun, marksmanship, and really it comes down to the grit of the gunfighter. Being able to take being shot at and still being able to hold your own and hit your mark. Back in the day, they were sometimes called shootist or gunmen. I read somewhere where Bat Masterson used it in his writings. It definitely took hold of the times of movies, television, but for the sake of these videos, I'm just going to say gunfighter, and we'll talk about if they were good, bad, or how some rode a broad gray line. Are all gunfights kind of the movie version that we grew up with? One gunfighter calls out another and they meet in a dusty street with the townspeople looking, and a light breeze blows dust and tumbleweeds in front of the gunfighters. And when the clock hits 12, they draw the speed of lightning, and one drops and the other is the victor, and he goes into the saloon and finishes his whiskey. Not always. Some of them are just luck. Some of them are kind of boring. One interesting thing is when I started Fast Draw, I read a lot of the Old West, on the Old West, and found that it's really not like the movies that I've seen. One thing I do like is that that's what got me into the Old West, to read the history of the Old West, was these movies. My very first movie was Young Guns. Emilio Estevez's Billy the Kid. A, got me into movies, hardcore, that opening scene. But B, I wanted to know more about Billy the Kid. Was this really Billy the Kid, or was this just exaggerated? And it was a great movie. And that's what I like about movies, is that they will take liberties to entertain you, and maybe you will fall in love with the Old West, and maybe you will grab an actual book on said gunfighter and learn about it. I was a little sad that not everything that I thought in the movies happened, and it was kind of not lame, but boring. But I did find a lot of other cool things, and we're going to talk about some of them. However, today we're going to discuss Bass Reeves. I'm going to get caught up with the two reviews that we did on Bass Reeves and Wyatt Earp, and we're going to talk about Bass Reeves today, and then the next one will be Wyatt Earp. So let's talk about Bass Reeves a little bit. Bass Reeves, an ex-slave, became a U.S. Deputy Marshal, has a fantastic arrest record, and today we're going to talk about Bass Reeves and Jim Webb, a 500-yard gunfight with lever actions. We usually think of six guns being the gunfights, but this one is actually of lever actions. Some backstory: Bass Reeves became a U.S. Deputy Marshal in 1875. He was able to get some of his outlaws by disguising himself. He had over 3,000 arrests, according to some, never been shot, and had 15 to 16 notches on his six gun. He had a very powerful reputation of getting the man that he was after. And usually outlaws, if they would hear Reeves was after him, they knew he wasn't going to stop until they got him. Now, Jim Webb, he was employed by a rancher. He came from Texas was hired by rancher Billy Washington in the Chickasaw Nation. He became the foreman of the ranch due to the fact that he was a brute. He ran everything with an iron fist, and many of the cowboys on the ranch were African Americans. Apparently, if he couldn't beat a man physically, he would just fire them, and he was actually quick to pull out his 6 guns if you had a disagreement. In 1883, the Reverend William Stewart, a rancher himself, started a grass fire, and in spring, that spread quickly. Jim Webb got hot-headed, went over to the Reverend, and an argument ensued, and Jim ended up shooting the Reverend Stewart. A warrant was issued for Jim. Bass and a guy named Floyd Wilson rode out to the Washington Ranch to arrest Webb. Interesting enough, Reeves and Wilson just showed up and they acted like they were just passing by and needed some food. Webb was suspicious, but Reeves and Floyd never gave in like they were there to arrest him. Webb and the cook, Frank Smith, kept their guns unholstered and down by their sides because they were suspicious. They didn't know these two, and they already knew they were kind of in hot water, so they were suspicious of probably everybody. So this didn't really give Bass or Wilson really any chance of a clean arrest. Apparently, after they fed Reeves and Wilson, Webb, just for a split second, took his eyes off Bass, and that's when Bass made his move. He knocks the gun out of Webb's hand. Reeves gets behind him and starts choking him in a chokehold, and Bass sticks his .45 in his face. Webb smells defeat and surrenders. Smith, Webb's friend, fires 2 shots at Reeves and misses. With Webb still in a chokehold, Bass fires 1 shot into Smith's belly, and Smith drops. He doesn't die, but he drops. He's just done with the gunfight. Wilson, Bass's sidekick, still frozen by everything that just happened and probably couldn't believe how fast everything just went on. Bass tells him to handcuff Webb. They put the two prisoners in a wagon headed for town. Smith dies from his belly wound on the way there. Something interesting to me that I found out, Webb spent only 1 year in jail, and what I find this to be incredibly expensive or pricey, $17,000 bond came in when he was erased. That's for 1883. Is that high? It seemed high to me. With that, he was released and he lit out, and the trial for murder never happened. Webb did find his way back a year later to the Chickasaw Nation in June 1884, and Bass was kind of ready. Reeves heard that he was at the Bywater's General Store, and he had a man named John Cantrell go to the store to see if he was there. He saw that he was, signals Reeves, and what happens next is one of the reasons that he definitely needed a show, because this is something that sounds like just out of a movie. Reeves gets the signal and rides towards the store. Webb notices Reeves riding up to the store. Webb decides he's not going through the front door, people. He's actually going to jump through the store window. With his rifle and 6 guns, he decides he's going to beeline it towards his horse. His horse, unfortunately or fortunately, happens to be 100 yards away. Bass gets in between him and his horse, and this is kind of where the gunfight begins. Webb finds some bushes, he jumps in, and I suppose he regains his composure for a split second, and then he steps out. He's actually 500 yards away from Bass Reeves at this point. Bass is still on his horse. He fires his Winchester at Bass. He fires 4 times. Now, this is what's just amazing. Fires at Bass 4 times. 1 bullet hits his saddle. The next bullet takes the button off his shirt. The 3rd bullet cuts the reins from Bass's horse. As Bass jumps from his horse to the ground, the 4th and final shot hits the brim of his hat. Bass jumps off his horse and fires 2 bullets into the outlaw before he falls. Webb is lying there. He's dying. The fight's out of him. He calls out for Bass. Bass walks up to the dying man with 2 holes in him, and Webb gives him or offers him his guns as a trophy. Amazing. It sounds like it's from a movie. Bass in 1907 in an interview said about the gunfight, Jim Webb was the bravest man I ever saw. Let's just recap here. 500 yards away, bullets getting very close to you. They hit his reins, hat, took a button off his shirt, and hit his saddle. Too close for comfort, right? Bass is quoted in the 1907 interview to say he shot 4 times, and every time he shot, he kept getting closer. He kept getting closer to me. He also said at the 500-yard distance, his 2 shots hit a ½ inch of each other. I mean, that's amazing. You just had bullets shot at you. This is why Bass Reeves is on my top list, guys. The grit of Bass Reeves shows in the gunfight is simply amazing. He's getting bullets that are being shot at him closer and closer and closer on the brim of his hat. I can only imagine what that sounds like. I play paintball and hear paintballs going past me, and it's unsettling. Can you imagine? And I know I'm not going to die from it. Can you imagine if you're in a gunfight and you have bullets zipping past you and everything, and they take a button off your shirt, they take your brim of your hat, you're hitting your saddle. The discipline to stay that calm during a gunfight, and how to be so collected to pull that off, and shooting your lever action at a ½ inch. This is why he became one of my top 5 gunfighters. Just really because of how he apprehended Webb. He stayed cool under pressure with most of the outlaws that he got. I mean, think about how he got Webb. He grabs Webb in a chokehold and fires 1 shot to take down Smith. He stayed calm. What a lawman, and for someone who couldn't read or write, he's an amazing legend of the Old West. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm really happy that the lawman Bass Reeves on the Paramount Network was made. I've talked about it in other podcasts, and I've read about him enough that you see the true Old West legend in Bass Reeves. He is a gunfighter, capital G. If you take a look at all his other gunfights and stuff, they are amazing. He pretended to be an ex-slave to get some people. He actually had to arrest his own son. We've talked about that before. Again, can't say it enough. He is a true West gunfighter legend of the Old West. Gunfighter of the Old West legend. I highly recommend Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of the Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves by Art T. Burton. It's an excellent book. Hold on. I highly recommend this book. I want you to go get it. I want you to read it. Tell me what you think. There's plenty more of his history in that book. The Paramount Network show touched a little bit up on it, but I'm really glad that they showed him in the light they did. The book is fantastic. So yeah, if you want to read more, please pick up that book. It's really worth it. Again, I'm going to get caught up on all these. Wyatt Earp is next. If you guys could, please subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the channel, share this video if you could, and share it with your fellow gunfighters. Remember to like it, because it always helps YouTube and their algorithms or whatever. But I really appreciate you guys watching. And again, this has been the Gunfights of the Old West. I had like 4 different titles to these, but I'm going to stick with Gunfights of the Old West. This has been a Final Shot Saloon episode. I think it's closing time, people.